whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie,
And Nikisha.
where we share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone. Which we know Brian will insert later. We love you, Brian. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Guys, it is a doozy of a day because there is so much to discuss. We are talking about the 2019 folk horror film Midsommar. If you know, you know. Guys, there's so much to discuss, so I want to get right into it because obviously I have a million questions for Jamie, and this is basically going to be Jamie going on a super tangent while Brian and I just sit with smiles on our faces.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Smiles or tears turning into smiles?
Or like it ends up being a therapy session for me too, so it's like, oh great, I feel like it's all going to be wrapped up into one thing.
Yeah, we're just recording Nikisha's therapy session today.
That's exactly what it is.
Good stuff, good stuff.
I mean, we talked about it, or at least I mentioned it on the Valentine's Day horror movie TikTok, and this
Sure.
was on the list of horrors about dating. So I'm so excited to get into this and hear both of you guys' thoughts on all of this. So Midsommar was written and directed by one Ari Aster, of course, and this movie stars Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, William Jackson Harper, or Chidi, as we love to call him, because The Good Place is fantastic. Wilhelm Blumgren. Wow, pulling a Brian. I practiced it because I listened to him say his own name, and it's still just hard to say that name. I'm sorry.
I think it sounded great.
Great. And lastly, Will Poulter. So, which is also the guy from Bandersnatch. Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Grant. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was a whole
Oh, yeah.
what is
cultural
that?
moment
That was
What
the
is
Choose
that?
Your Own Adventure Black Mirror episode.
on Netflix.
Oh.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Where it was like, click this, and then this choice happened?
Yes.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Okay. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was,
They were
was
gonna
fun.
such a
do
big
more
deal.
of a thing with it, and I guess they really didn't.
I guess I said this was too much. We can
Too
only
much
do one of
choice.
these.
We're
Yeah.
Too many
taking
choices.
the choices away.
Right. You get what you get. We're taking the choices away. So obviously heavy spoilers for Midsommar. And Jamie, please tell us all about those trigger warnings because there are so many.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, there's so much unpleasant things that I like forgot about. I was like, oh, that's my brain's defense mechanism because I forgot that all these terrible things happened.
That was
So
beautifully sung,
where-
by the way. Just have to say that. I'm just-
Where do I start? All right. So, okay. Heavy trigger warning. There is murder suicide that takes place right in the beginning of this film. There you see the images of it. It's awful. It's carbon monoxide poisoning. There is a lot of insides of animals and people on the outsides. A lot of other like suicides that take place. There is a lot of drug usage. There is assault and references to assault. But yeah, just mostly insides on the outside in very unpleasant, disturbing ways. Oh God, I'm just thinking about the weird lungs that are breathing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there is nudity of all genders. All bits and bops are available.
Bits and bops. Yes.
So nudity warning for you. And I mean, this is a movie that centers around grief. So like just emotionally, if that is not where you're at, I would steer fully clear of this film with a capital F. But it's not an F. We'll get into that.
Exactly.
Did I miss anything? Did I miss any?
I just toxic relationships in general.
Yeah, that was the thing that I blocked out of my head. Just unpleasant relationships.
Yeah.
Do we say sexual assault?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah. Just a lot of things. So
A lot.
steer clear. I mean, this is
This movie has it all.
especially all the bits and bops.
The
bits
bits and
and
bops,
bops.
yeah.
The bits and bops.
Can't deny the bits and bops.
Beautiful. So, producer Brian, please give us some words so that we can get heavily into this movie.
Yeah, sure. So, hi everybody. You're maybe listening to us on podcast form, or we're on YouTube. Hi YouTube.
Hi.
You can find us there. You can also find us on all of the social media. That is including TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk Horror Pod. We did it. We crossed 10K followers. We have playlists now. Very exciting. Thank you all so much. If you haven't followed us, we're having a really fun time there. So check us out on TikTok. And then we're doing Midsommar because Ari Aster's new movie, Beau is Afraid, is coming out soon. And we've already done Hereditary. Check out our Hereditary episode from a couple seasons ago where we break that down. So we wanted to make sure that we included Midsommar. I keep wanting to say Midsommar because that's how the Swedish say it, I guess, like in their language or whatever it is. But I watched 1,000 Ari Aster interviews today, and he didn't say the title once. But all the interviewers said Midsommar. He never corrected them, or I'm sure that whatever. So Midsommar it is. But yeah, it drove me nuts today just trying to figure that out. But yeah, we're doing Midsommar so that we can make sure that we have all of his movies, all two of them, under our belts before we go into Beau is Afraid. And then, listen to this one and that one, and then we'll have Beau is Afraid for you. Or if you're listening to this when Beau is Afraid is out, you have the three ready to go.
There we go. I will say, to your point of Midsommar, it's also the spelling, too. When you look at it,
Sure.
It's not spelled how we would spell midsummer. So it's
Right.
cause for question, I believe.
Such an uproar amongst the pronunciation crew.
Exactly. You guys let us know. Is it Midsummer or Midsommar? Like,
How will they
throw it
let
up in
us
the
know?
comments. Follow us on TikTok at Talk Horror Pod.
Yeah. Stitch with us on TikTok and tell us how you say Midsommar or Midsummer.
Or Midsummer. Tell us your reasoning. Give us a full essay.
Yeah.
Grand. Okay, guys. But also, I heard that you have been watching some things. So can you tell me some other horror movie things that have been filling your minds and eyeballs lately?
Sure. So not horror related, but kind of disastery, whatever related. I did watch Plane with Gerard Butler and the guy from Luke Cage and Evil. His name is escaping me right now. But Jamie will look it up while I'm talking about
sure
this.
will. Mike Coulter.
Mike Coulter, that's right.
He's great.
He's fantastic.
He's really
Plane,
good at Evil. I need to rewatch that or get back into it.
I
yeah.
need to watch that too.
People really like it. I mean, I watched some of it with Jamie when she watched the first season, and I had a ball just watching a few of them. But I watched Plane, and Plane was exactly what I wanted it to be. It's a Gerard Butler action movie, like with heart, and some really good sequences. Like, I didn't have to think during it. Like, I was just like pure entertainment. I loved it. I would highly suggest it if you're in the mood for something. You just want action, turn your brain off. Gerard Butler is so damn charming in all of his action movies. Like, if you've never seen Greenland ended up being really good. And if you want to just smile and laugh, Geostorm. But an actual good movie is Olympus Has Fallen. But great film. But Jamie and I, this is like maybe 2 weeks ago now. Jamie and I watched for the first time My Bloody Valentine 3D.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had never seen it before. We had to complete the Supernatural Brother reboot
The
marathon.
2009, something about
Okay.
2009 Supernatural actors needing to star in reboots. I don't get it. But.
I had a great time. I thought it was really fun. I thought that the campy bloodiness of it all was super fun. And quite frankly, I did not see the ending coming. I don't want to spoil it here, but that twist, I I didn't think that the movie was going to pull those punches, and it did. And I super dug the whole thing. I was super. Is it great? No. Was I engaged for like the 2 hours and like had a great time? Sure. Was I entertained by the fact that we watched it in 2D and the 3D was still like, like
yes,
like
Oh
there?
man, yeah. Every
Like
time
Saw.
it was like supposed
Yeah.
to be in 3D, I'd get in Brian's face and be like, ugh. I just wanted him to experience it the way that I experienced it.
So do you actually, Jamie, watched it in theaters with the 3D moments?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Oh man.
Have you seen it,
What a
Nikisha?
time.
I have not seen it,
Oh, good.
but I can only imagine that it feels like the Saw 3D that came out, I think maybe around the same time.
I think there was a Saw movie that I saw in theaters. I saw a lot of them in theaters for a while because they were just like coming out year after year. I can't remember which one. It might have been the 3D one. But I started to actually feel sick while watching it. And I was like, I know it's not the content because I've seen all these other ones. So I'm assuming
Right.
it's something about the 3D is like not sitting well with me. And I had to like step out of the theater and like catch my breath and then like go back in.
So
I
Saw
can't even remember which one it was.
3D came out in 2010. So like same time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Same-
makes sense because I
era.
was in
Yeah.
college. I know I was in college when I saw it.
God, too many bits and bops in your faces. That's why I got you a little sick.
when all the bits and bobs
Well,
are like,
there are a lot for extended period of time of bits and bops in My Bloody Valentine 3D.
oh yeah,
Where's it streaming?
I don't know. We may have watched it somewhere where it's not supposed to be streaming.
Great. I'll find it.
No,
it's
on
Find it.
Prime.
Great.
Oh, we watched it
as
on
of right
Prime.
now, Prime and Tubi.
Oh, yeah, we did.
We
Good.
watched. We had
Tubi.
commercials. I
Yeah,
think.
we had commercials. We watched it on Prime or Tubi. That's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Without spoilers, there's a whole sequence where someone was like naked, like being
Fully
chased.
naked, being chased.
Great. We love it. Just uncomfortable, vulnerable, about to die. It's
Yeah, I
all
like
the
that. I
things.
like that
Yeah.
spin. Just vulnerable.
Very vulnerable.
Well, two things. So first off, I just came from Salem today, guys.
Wait, really?
Yes,
I
because
thought
we're-
I spotted a witch house photo on your Instagram, and I was like, "Wait,
Yes.
is that like the witch house in
It
Salem?"
was the witch house. Yeah, we
Very
so
cool.
we're in Boston, and my friend reminded me that Salem is only like a 30-minute drive away. I
Yeah.
would have been going there every off day. But we went today, and we saw it's basically, if you watch the TikTok, Brian, that you put of when you guys went to Salem, like, we hit all the same
Cool.
spots. And I had been there before,
Right.
But I just went again, and it was nice to go in the off season. So this is my first time going in the off season, and so it was nice that we weren't shoulder to shoulder with people like in the Witch Village.
Yeah.
And, we could go and see. We went to the Salem Witch Museum, and it wasn't super crowded, and
With those badass animatronics.
oh my gosh. Okay, so when I saw it, I just have to say, I feel like when I first saw it in spooky season, there were actors like reenacting like certain things that were happening, and this one, it was just like a voiceover and like the little animatronics, but it was just figures, wax figures. They weren't moving at all. It was just the lights.
Yeah,
that were
uh-huh.
moving
Yeah.
around.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
they're not animatronics. Right. It's
No.
yeah.
The lights are just moving on each of them, but I mean, they're really cool, like wax
Like
figures.
wax figures.
Man, it's
But
like
that was
right,
not what I experienced the first time.
No, it's like right out of the 60s and 70s. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, but I still dug it. I mean,
Oh,
because,
hell yeah.
Witches. So,
Yeah.
we had a good spooky time today. And then part deux. So I haven't watched a lot of movies because, y'all, I'm still going through The Walking Dead, and we're on season 3. So
Oh,
we're in the
damn.
prison.
Oh, yeah.
We're zooming right by. Merle is back. Where the hell was Merle? He was gone for a season and a half.
Merle's
and now
Daryl's
he's
brother,
back.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. So super excited to continue on in that, but I am fully invested now, guys. It's like every time I come home from the show, me and my roommate will sit and just watch 2 or 3 episodes of The Walking Dead.
Do you have favorite characters?
Yeah, Daryl, hands
Oh, yeah,
down,
duh.
right now is my favorite person.
Has Michonne showed up yet?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're getting to know her. So with the 2 zombies that she has, but then she like killed them.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Yeah. So she hasn't really dug her feet in yet. Andrea is still just as annoying as ever. I
Sure.
hate her. I really hope that she is out of the show soon because she gets on my nerves.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's a good time. I'm excited to
man.
continue on.
I'm jealous that you're watching it for the first time. That's so exciting. Like, there's so much.
So good.
Like, I'm fascinated to hear, as a binge watcher, going through all of it and seeing if you felt at certain points, like when you think the lulls are, when you're less interested in it, because like binging it is so vastly different from watching it week to week and waiting and then getting like, oh, I have to tune in, these characters are so annoying. But like, if you're just like keep going, like, I'm so jealous.
I mean, it's just been a ride uphill from the start for me. So it hasn't felt like a lull, but it might be because I'm binge watching it, and so
Sure.
it just is like the action keeps going. There's something new. There's a baby that's about to happen.
Oh, you haven't gotten to. Oh my gosh, there's so
Yeah,
much.
the baby hasn't been born yet. The baby's still in there. We'll see what happens.
Damn, cool. I look forward to more of your Walking Dead updates.
Yes. Fun times. Well, speaking of updates, well, that's a back segue, but I was going to say we need a summary, a plot summary
What's the plot?
of our good old Midsommar. So Brian has so graciously volunteered
Yes,
to do that for us.
I will do
job.
this. All right, who wants
Brian.
to time
I
me?
will time you. All right, not 15 minutes. That is far too generous of an amount of time.
Exactly.
All right, so you have 2 minutes on my little clock, not the calculator app.
Okay.
And
Right.
that is the amount of time that you have to give us a good old plot summary. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, and go.
Okay, so we watched Midsommar. Midsommar opens with the prologue that shows our main character, Danny, being really worried about her family because her sister, who we found out is bipolar, has kind of sent some ominous, nefarious emails to her. She's not answering back. Long story short, we find out that Danny is keeping calling her family, and her sister has jerry-rigged the car to basically kill all of them with carbon monoxide poisoning while Danny is at college. And Danny basically leans on her boyfriend Christian for that support, for to help grieve. Anyway, flash forward a few months. They're all going to Sweden to kind of work on their thesis. They're anthropology grad students, where she is a psychology grad student, and they go to Sweden and essentially are experiencing Midsommar in Sweden. Lots of things start happening. It's all very nefarious. A lot of the guests who have been brought are disappearing. Their friends start to disappear. All of this in the midst of Danny and Christian kind of at odds in terms of their relationship. And then Danny becomes the Mayflower Queen, and Christian is then drugged and basically sent to reproduce with some of the people in this commune. And then at the end, Danny gets to choose who the last person to die is, because they need to sacrifice 9 outsiders, and she decides on her boyfriend Christian, and then she lights Christian on fire along with the rest of the other 8 people, and she finally has some sort of relief and semblance of normalcy because she got rid of her boyfriend, so she smiles. And she's the Mayfair Queen, and that's Midsommar. Damn it. There's much more to it than that, but I feel like that's like a basic outline of this movie.
Yeah.
And that's the plot.
We'll get into
That was good.
all of the details of things in our next section, likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
So, guys, tell me if this is... I'm sure this is not the first time you've seen this movie, but tell me how many times you have seen this movie and give me your likes and gripes on it. Jamie, you want to go first?
Sure. I don't remember how many times I've seen this movie. I want to say this is maybe my third time, maybe four. I can't remember. It's one of those. And I saw it in theaters. I don't remember with who. I'm assuming. I was going to assume Brian, but now I really don't know.
No, this is only my second time seeing this, and I watched this with Jamie in the comfort of our own home when we were kind of binging stuff like Hereditary. Then we watched this, but this was only my second time watching it.
Yeah, I can't remember who I saw this with, so shout out to whoever you are out there.
Yikes.
I mean, it's probably, I'm going to shout out my friend Micaiah, who was like my go-to horror movie person that I would see all horror movies with. So shout out Micaiah. I'm assuming it is you. But this movie, I love this movie. It's so good and also deeply disturbing and like makes me cry. But also like there's parts that feel really good. There's parts that feel super cathartic. I also just like love Florence Pugh, and she's incredible in this, and like just showcases a truly excellent performance. And yeah, it's just like it's all around good. And let me tell you my reasons why. Here is my thesis statement. Yes. So my first note is Florence Pugh is a queen, because just the way that she's just conveying so much, and also is like holding so much back throughout this whole movie. And it's just like it feels very real. The first thing that I clocked is her crying while also like keeping her voice as steady as possible, because she's clearly upset in that moment while on the phone with Christian, because she got this like what she realizes later is a suicide note email from her sister, and like is concerned and doesn't really know what to do in that moment. But like just the ability of her, it's like holding these two conflicting pieces of like both expressing like the emotions coming out of her because she's crying, but she's like trying to keep it all together. And like because of the earlier thesis you hear maybe like a few sentences before where she's talking to a friend, and she essentially is saying like, I'm afraid that my emotions are going to drive him away. Like that's like the core of this movie, until she finally realizes that like maybe he's not that great of a guy, and because of him she's not able to like just be her authentic self while also going through something incredibly traumatic and like experiencing grief. But for like a good chunk of it, we get like her holding herself back because she's afraid of losing this relationship. And you know, like we can speculate for some of the reasons, but like we also get a lot of the reasons. Like she doesn't want to be alone. She doesn't want to be alone while she's like, you know, now alone. She lost her whole family. Yeah. So like she really doesn't have anyone else. But also like going through this grieving process alone is also terrifying. So like she is willing to like compartmentalize that to the best that she's even able to in order to like keep the relationship with him going. But also he is a juvie head, and all of his friends are kind of juvie head. Well, at least Will Poulter is definitely a juvie head.
Definitely.
Just the worst.
He's also
he's
also a pee-pee log. He's a Judy head and a pee-pee logger.
And a pee-pee log. Okay,
great. But like I think the same day that we watched this, I also got a text from my mother-in-law.
I thought you were going to say a text from an ex.
No. No, that would be weirder. No, I got a text from my mother-in-law linking to an article from the New York Times about how like therapy language has really been integrated in like contemporary dating today, which like I've also like just heard in conversations with my own clients. But I thought of it because in the beginning, when all the guys are together talking about the potential of going to Sweden and they do go to Sweden, right? That's where this all takes place.
Yes.
Cool. I got really nervous for 1 second that I just fully said the wrong place. But there's a comment that Will Poulter's character says where he's like, she's abusing you. And it made me think about how like people misuse these like charged words and like it's just like perpetuating harm in other ways. So like he's using it wrongly. Like she's grieving and like having a normal emotional reaction, and they're like framing her to be the bad guy for wanting companionship from her partner. And like it's gross, and like you should read it as gross, but I just thought it was so interesting that like, you know, they could take that language and spin it to like work in favor of their narrative. Like, oh, she's abusing you, like she's so like claustrophobic and like clingy and all of those things. But it's like, on one hand, if she's reading that she can't express the emotions because he's going to leave. On the other hand, the friends are like, she's expressing too much, you should leave. Like clearly there's tension here and something is not working.
Yeah, and the prologue in general, like those first 15 minutes before the title card drops and like it's in the snow and whatnot, like all of that is truly, I don't even know if there's a more perfect setup for what this movie is trying to do and is. Like, and all of that takes place in like the winter and the cold, kind of like literally, like they even talk about at the end where they bring up like what all the seasons mean to his community, and like winter is like the death, the advising, the like end of your life cycle, but the movie starts with the end of the life cycle, which I think is fascinating. And Jamie bring up like the framing of everything and us seeing like her trauma firsthand, how they're interpreting it, all of that, just like, you know, everything you need to know about every single character who's going to Sweden, and like all of it playing out from there is almost just like cherry on top, because like it's just so perfectly set up.
And it doesn't feel like overkill either. It doesn't feel like too much exposition.
Yeah, totally.
Really great. And I never thought about that until you said that, but it's like that is exactly the right amount of information that we need to know to carry on throughout these people's lives.
Well, because it's happening. There's action happening. She's worried about her family. It didn't all happen and they're explaining what happened. They're all going through it in that moment. And it's kind of pretty spectacular the way that Ari Aster like frames all of that in that opening sequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely think this is like one of the best, just like, not being heavy-handed and like framing things without treating the audience like they're stupid and like setting things up, but like there's still this, like, we'll get into all of it, but like there still is the tension and the sense of like what is going to happen next, at the same time completely parallel to we are being spoon-fed exactly what's going to happen constantly throughout this entire film. And so like the fact that like we are fearful of like, oh my god, what's coming, we also have seen it. There's like images throughout the entire thing, and I love that. Yes, because it's like it's so cleverly interwoven throughout the story, and we're seeing everything. But like we're also like essentially told what's going to happen. It's just a matter of like, you know, are you paying attention enough? Like not realizing that that's essentially what we're being told. But like it's so good.
This movie's a foreshadow fest.
Yeah,
like
absolutely,
but not in like a bad way.
No,
like it's not. It's still super engaging. Like I'm not like bored being like, oh, I guess that's gonna happen next. Like it's still like, I don't know. I watching it, even rewatching it, I still feel like that there's tension building and it's keeping me on my toes, even though like, you know, you know what's gonna happen because they're telling you, but like it's still scary. It's still like instilling that fear. And because I think it's like a fear that people can empathize with, and I'm going to say empathy a whole lot in this too, but like these are like, you know, grief is something that all of us as humans have to contend with. And so like I think that by making the fear really real, despite it being set in a place where maybe like we're not all super exposed to that setting, but like still bringing it close to home is what like makes it really engaging. shout out to that transition from Danny running into the bathroom.
Absolutely.
Between. But like her running and going to the bathroom and then being in the bathroom on the plane is like just top tier, one of the best transitions ever of all time. So a huge and I think I clocked Brian while he was taking his notes. He wrote the same thing. But the fact that this whole movie takes place in the daylight, in the sun, where everything is bright, and, you know, typically the trope is that, like, spooky things take place in the dark. You can't see well. It's scary. I'm afraid of the dark. You'd think that being in the sunlight and daylight would, like, offer a sense of comfort. But even in the beginning, after they've taken the shrooms, when Will Poulter's character is like freaking out and he's like, ugh, why is it still light out? Isn't this supposed to be dark? And he's explaining like the midnight sun and saying like, it's like, you're okay, but they're actually not okay. That's like one of my favorite things of like spinning a trope on its head and you know, switching up on us and still being spooky.
I think also to your point of Danny going from the bathroom in the apartment to the bathroom on the plane, I think what also adds to that in the same vein is that even though she's in a different spot, she's still feeling the exact same amount of grief. And so like, even though her atmosphere is changing, even though her environment is changing, she's still feeling the same things. And so I think that's definitely the same with the fact that even though they are in the sunlight, they are still experiencing all of this tension and grief and whatever things that they're dealing with or whatever they've brought with them to this place. So like the environment is not changing that, which is also just beautiful to see.
No, that's a really excellent point that, like, you know, she's trying to get away to, like, help compartmentalize and deal with the grief. But, like, you can't just, like, shove it away. It's still going to be there. And, like, every time that she's, like, having a breakdown we see throughout the film, she's, like, removing herself from everyone else. She's, like, excusing herself. She's not allowing herself to experience the grief around other people until the end. So, yeah, she's just, like, constantly trying to hide those true emotions that she's having. The jump scare of the sister behind her when she like goes to the bathroom when she's having that panic attack.
Oh, in the outhouse?
In the outhouse. I hated that. Did not like that. I also got really annoyed when Christian was trying to light the cake over and over again. That really stressed me out.
Oh,
I was like, stop.
Perfect.
I literally wrote, stop lighting this cake. Just give up.
Leave it alone.
Just
leave
stop.
It alone.
It was perfect.
I forgot.
Man.
Oh my God. No, that stressed me out.
Him, like, that's just a microcosm of, like, what he just is, like, they're both trying to get this spark and they know that, like, it's just a forgotten cake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, woof.
My next note is Christian sucks. He's so smarmy and slimy. And as I was writing that was also the scene where Chibi called him leechy and lazy. So I just added that on top of it.
Leechy, lazy.
But like, man, Christian is just like he's so lazy, but like, it's just like all encompassing. Like he's too lazy to break up with his girlfriend. He's too lazy to like, you know, not
find his
invite
own thesis.
her. Yeah, like he's just like not even about the thesis, just like how he's too lazy in his response when he's told that he was been approved to mate with like one of the other people from that village. Like he just like is so like not engaged in anything until it's like he's gonna be in trouble, and then he's like, oh no, I have nothing to do with this.
Man,
but,
he has no spine.
He's just so disengaged. Yeah,
None.
that very much that.
That scene with Josh Chidi, when he's telling him he's going to do the thesis or whatnot, is truly is horrific. That scene just shows truly this like bastard man. He is awful in that scene. That scene brings me so much angst.
Yeah.
See, that's so funny because really all of the scenes with Danny bring me way more angst than that one. That's just like that's because it's I don't know. I just like I feel so much more uncomfortable when he's like just not engaged. Oh, the scene where Danny comes up to him and is like, "Oh, the couple is or like the guy from the couple left without his fiance."
Right.
And he's like having a conversation with someone and he just like fully dismisses her and continues to engage. Oh my God, that part makes me feel the rage that you feel. I watching Danny's face just being stuck there, like left behind in this active conversation that he's like, oh, speaking on this, and then just like totally disregards her, and it's awful, and she's just standing there, and like, oh, it just makes me so upset.
I think that the reason why that conversation about the thesis bothers me so much is because we've already seen the examples of how he's a bad boyfriend, of how he's dismissive, how monstrous he can be because he has no spine. We don't see it as much with his friends, even though we kind of do at the beginning where he's like, oh, by the way, I invited her. Like, she won't come. Like, all of that. Like, you know, I feel like you have different relationship with your friends and potentially with your when you've already like shown how awful you are to your girlfriend as like a character. So like that scene was like, oh, he's an all around horrible person. Yes. Like, it's not like he's choosing to be this way just with Danny. Like, he is a bastard person to everybody.
Right. The fact that he said, oh, and it was y'all's idea to invite her, not mine. And you're just like, what are you saying? You're dropping all of this, like, is she going to come? Is she
no
not
responsibility.
No,
none.
Like,
for any.
Like you mentioned, like, oh, we don't even really associate with them. Like, that's insane. Insane.
Yeah.
Wild.
Oh my God. On the flip side, Pele is like actively trying to empathize and like sit in Danny's feelings with her when he's having that conversation of like, does he feel like home to you? But like, he's also he's really trying to be compassionate, but she's still not ready to like talk about it. But you see just this like stark contrast between him and Christian, where he's like actively saying like, oh, I lost my family too in a fire, wink, 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 nudge. You know, because we could probably assume that it's the same thing that happens to Christian
right,
in the end.
Right.
But like, I think just his willingness to have that conversation with her, to like empathize with her, it was just like he's a nice guy, even though you know all this stuff happens. But like he's a nice guy. I like.
He's a nice guy who convinced all them to go to their deaths.
Yeah. yeah.
Who actually really hates him and wants to just bring him all his sacrifices.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah,
it's a nice guy.
Well,
that's fine. That's
whatever. But and then so the last really thing that I will end with is just like this being such a great example of empathy, like the way that this like village of people act in all of these moments, with I would say the exception is when the two elderly folks like commit suicide off of the cliff. Nobody else really reacts, but both when Danny like, you know, sees Christian engaging in being assaulted because he's under the influence, and then at the end when like they burn the building that the people are inside of, you see like the village fully engaged in this like empathetic writhing, and like, well, they're writhing at the end because I think that's what's happening, I'm assuming, to the people burning in the building. But the like grieving screams and cries when Danny finally has her moment of catharsis where she's like allowing herself to experience all of the grief all at once. It's not just she's grieving her family who's dead. She's grieving like probably the end of her relationship. Like this is like a culminating moment where it's like she can finally let go of all of this stuff that she's been holding on to in order to keep this relationship going. And like seeing him in that compromised position was like the last thing that I think just allowed her to like let go. I think that like the physical representation of her like actually vomiting as the first sign of her like letting something out, I thought was like really powerful actually. Like, you know, like just letting go. She's literally letting go, and like she throws up. And then is like, it's not just that everyone around her is like screaming, but like they're like sobbing. They're like crying with her. They're like fully in that emotional state with her. And it was so I found that very moving and powerful, and it like makes me cry because it's just like you don't see empathy displayed in that way. Like people empathize and like sit in feelings, and like empathy is different from sympathy. Empathy is different from pity. Like this is like really like engaging in the emotional state that somebody else is at, like meeting them where they're at, like putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And like they really do that with her in that moment. I find that so powerful, so deeply moving. And then again at the end when they're all watching like the sacrifices building burn up, they're like screaming and writhing as if they themselves are actually in pain. Again, I find that very powerful that they are like putting themselves in the shoes of the people who like also offered to sacrifice themselves, which is why you can hear them screaming at the end. The ones that are at least alive, and supposedly like with the medicine that's supposed to make them not feel anything, but I guess that's not really how that works.
Well, was it not supposed to make them feel anything, or supposed to not,
or just not
make them feel fear? Because didn't she say like this will help with the fear, or did she actually say?
She said fear and suffering.
Yeah. As if they weren't gonna feel it.
Right. I guess it's more about like emotionally being scarred as opposed to like you're being burned alive. It's pretty brutal.
Either way, it's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter if you volunteer or not. So,
yeah. So I appreciate that. Like it's not just about like, you know, oh cool, those two guys, you know, sacrificing themselves for the greater good, but like they are really experiencing that agony for themselves and like going through that process, and like we see it, and I really appreciate that. And obviously like, you know, the end where you see her facial expression change is like chef's kiss. Also shout out to the maypole dance scene. I love that part. It's so good. But yeah, ultimately like her screaming, grunting, crying, wailing with the women all around her is like my absolute favorite part of this movie. It's perfect. 10 out of 10. No notes.
Just all the likes, no gripes.
Yeah.
You said a lot of mine, so like cut my stuff in half. I agree like with all of what Jamie has to say. I just have like sprinkle in a few more things.
Wait, but Nikisha, what number time is this for you seeing the movie?
I want to say maybe my third time seeing it. Okay. The first time was during the pandemic because it was streaming on Amazon Prime at the time, and so I just sat and watched it, and it was a wild ride. But this go around is gonna be a lot of what my likes are because of having watched it before and watching it now and seeing some things that I didn't see necessarily before.
Sure.
So first, of course, I love the painting at the beginning detailing the events of the movie with the love potion and all basically like the different seasons that are happening with that picture, and then that kind of mirroring when they're showing off the picture when they are in Sweden of like the love potion and all that stuff. I also love that the screaming and Jamie said this, but also just the scream at the beginning that Danny gives her family, and then it mirroring the screams that she gives at the end when she finds her boyfriend cheating, which led me down this whole pathway of there are a lot of mirror motifs in this movie that I really wasn't thinking of, especially in how it was shot, which is another one of my likes, because one thing that I really enjoyed was when Danny is talking to Christian, but you just see Danny and Christian is like in the back, but you can kind of see him reflected in a picture. So it's not necessarily like a mirror, but you can kind of like see his reflection as they're talking. And then it's kind of the same thing that happens when Christian is telling his friends, and all you see in the camera are the friends, but you see the reflection of like Christian from a picture. And so I think that was just a really cool way to be filming things that I really liked.
in a scenario like that, you'd be cutting in between the two of them so you don't see the reaction at the same time. So being able to see them both at the same time, and then also the choreography of the scene, the actual like blocking in terms of them like being further apart and him going closer to her, like with all of that is just absolutely that's on my likes too, so that's why I'm kind of throwing that in there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Huge shout out to the cinematographer Paweł Pogorzelski. He did Hereditary as well, but he also did Fresh.
Oh, nice.
He was the so that was super cool. Like he's an amazing dude. Anyway, back to sorry. I just wanted to say that because I was on
No. I love that, and I love that Fresh is also a part of his thing because that also just makes sense with how that movie works as well, and it's also on the list of horrible dating
for
movies,
sure.
So all tying in together for good reason. I also just want to say the conversation with Danny finding out that Christian was going to Sweden, and the fact that she apologizes and says that she misunderstood when he was basically just saying, I told you that I was going. I think that was so well written because it was just so infuriating, but you're understanding exactly what's happening at the same time and truly what the dynamic of that relationship is. And I think that was just like the peak of this is how their relationship works. This is how it's been working for years and years and years. And we are seeing firsthand like exactly how he is gaslighting her and how she is reacting to this gaslighting. So I think that whole scene just really sets up everything very well. Obviously, the tension building in this is so great, but I will say one of my gripes in watching it this time around was that there was so much time before shit hits the fan in Sweden. Like you have the ball drop with the family suicide at the beginning, and then there's a lot of movie time that passes, and this movie is timed at like 2 hours and 30 minutes, I believe. And so it felt a little bit longer to get to everything, but it might just have been because I knew what was coming. So I was just waiting for the thing to come. And it was also like 11:30 at night when I started watching this movie, and I was like, oh, this is longer than I remember. So maybe that also has something to do with it. So it's like, oh, okay, I have 2 shows tomorrow. We're going to see how we get through this. One of the other things that... First off, the score is fantastic, and the creepy 6-note theme of Sweden when they're like playing the flutes when they come in, I think is gorgeous. We love a good soundtrack, and I think that it matches everything completely with how the tones relate to each other, because it seems like it should be in a major kind of happy thing, but it's also still unsettling at the same time. And I think it's just how the intervals of the notes are between those 6 notes that really add to it. So I absolutely love that. One thing that I caught this time around that I didn't last time was when Pele brings his father figure and is introducing everyone, and he's like, hi, how you doing? And then he goes to Danny and he says, welcome home. And that's the only one that he does that to. And I was like, because that's her home. This is so great. I love this so much. The costuming, simple, wonderful. We love it. And I loved the gore in this and the special effects, especially with the elder suicide that happens. And then when the hammer comes in, I just thought that all of those special effects were so beautiful and well done, especially on the heels of watching all the zombie everythings. It's just like, oh, I'm so into special effects and, and makeup and all how they make all of those things happen and it'd be so realistic. So I thought that was really great. And I also loved, in regards to the score, the things getting quiet when the suicides happen. So you're not getting kind of, what would we call it? What is it called? Foley art.
Yeah.
When you're getting the sound effects of things happening. It's like you know, and you see this happening, but you're not hearing it. And I think that is just something that kind of like fucks with your brain, which I think is really cool that they just decided to not have any sound with that at all. And I think that just adds to what is happening. Is this actually happening? Did my sound just cut out? Like, what's going on? So really love that. And the last thing that I'll say is one of the quotes that I thought was really kind of beautiful that was said, and I think it was right after the suicide is it's no good fighting the inevitable. When he was talking about death, it corrupts the spirit. I was like, oh, that's kind of deep, because that's where we're all gonna head in whatever shape, way, or form. Like, we come into this world and we know that at some point we're not going to be in this world anymore. So it's like, why fight it? It corrupts your spirit. And I think it kind of speaks on just being more present, because you don't know when that time is going to happen. Not to say that when you're 72, you should off yourself, but to the beautiful effect of not letting death have a hold on you, and you feeling like you have some type of control to make sure you're staying present in your life. And I think that was a cool kind of takeaway in a weird, fucked up way that this like commune is doing. But all siding with Jamie on all the things that she said, 10 out of 10, wonderful.
Yeah.
Brian?
Cool. So I'll go through mine a little bit. I won't repeat anything that you've all said, but I think in the opening, in addition to what we've talked about already, Christian's opinion on Danny's sister letting her sister do it to her perfectly sets up his character. Just like that, his opinion, like his strong opinion about something that he's like shouldn't have an opinion on, when that's like literally what he does in some ways. Just all the foreshadowing in this movie, just to recap some of those, like when they joke about him impregnating somebody in Sweden at the beginning, all the tapestries in this movie. There's the bear art above her bed, with the girl in the flower crown petting the bear. You have that. The zipping up of the body bags at the beginning, showing that her parents didn't get to choose the way they went out. And I think that's why Danny's a little bit she's terrified but fascinated by the fact that like these older people got to choose how they exited the world in a communal way. The relationship is very sad in this movie, and the human behavior seems very real to me in this. Even their garbage people, like the garbage people are acting like real garbage people, not movie garbage people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that two of my favorite things in this movie are that when there's that shot of her looking out the window of the plane, and it's gorgeous, and then you have that bit of turbulence and it cuts. That like one moment of turbulence. This movie, I remember the first time watching this movie and having no idea what was going to happen next. But there's all this foreshadowing, obviously, and that I like that this movie shows you that she's taking Ativan for anxiety at the beginning of this movie, and so you're watching this whole movie through kind of the lens of anxiety, and then like you have all these little things that up the tension, the score, as Nikisha mentioned, some of these transitions and shots, as Jamie mentioned, but then you have that one shot where they're finally going in down that road and the whole camera flips, and then it flips back again like you're being transported somewhere. I think that it just really sets the tone and mood throughout this whole thing. Again, I mentioned the cinematography, spectacular. Something else I wanted to bring into this is that, in addition to some of the communal experience stuff that we talked about, they do moan when he breaks his leg, and then they have to kill him. So they're all moaning with the old man when his leg is broken. They're moaning with the sex. They're crying with Danny. They're crying at the end. And what's interesting is, at the beginning, Danny is moaning into Christian's lap, and he could not be more apathetic. That, in conjunction or in juxtaposition to how this community moans with her, super powerful, especially on multiple watches. There's a lot of editing in this where it cuts on inhales and exhales. Breathing, when Danny will start to breathe or start to cry, and it'll cut. When they're breathing out to blow the candle, it cuts. When they're all growling with the pain, it cuts as well. That's fascinating to me. A couple other things I wanted to mention is that the table is a mirror table. The long table. And then Jamie and I talked about this. The movie does such a spectacular job of reminding you of what she is carrying with her this whole time. The death of her family and how she couldn't she just didn't do enough to save them, in her opinion. And you obviously have the jump scare of her sister. Her sister's face is in the forest behind Danny when she's announced as the May Queen. So it's kind of there, always on top of that. But at the end, showing the trips is amazing. Like that, just like slight CGI of everything being like a little off kilter. And at the end, when she makes the decision whether it's going to be Christian or the rando and chooses Christian, like the second that she finds herself at home, the CGI stops, just to show that she is totally like coherent and lucid when she is making the decision. I thought that's just absolutely wonderful. And I want to say that my favorite thing about this movie, without a doubt, is that it, no matter how you watch it, it's excellent. Meaning, is this a breakup movie? Yeah, it's an amazing 10 out of 10 breakup movie. Is this a horror movie? Yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 horror movie. Is this a black comedy? Yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 black comedy. And then what Jamie turned me on to, and I did more research on it, is this a fairy tale? Yeah, it is. She's an orphan at the beginning who becomes a princess at the end. 10 out of 10. Yeah. Like a queen, excuse me, at the end.
A
queen, 10 out of 10.
Skip so many steps.
Yeah, exactly. But like, this is a Ari Aster said that this is a codependency horror movie, which is fascinating. And then he says it's also a feel-good movie for dissatisfied partners. I just think that this is spectacular. And I have two gripes. Danny says Christian or Christian two different ways throughout this movie, and I couldn't figure out why she says it differently. Was one scene filmed before another one? I don't know. Super weird. And then there's too much legroom on the plane. When she's like squeezing in, like there's too much legroom. There's just too much.
First class, baby.
I guess. Some quotes. Oh fuck! It's a new person. Both my grandparents died from ticks. There are lots of dicks on the wall. Check my scalp for ticks, and I'll check yours. Again, Jamie mentioned, does he feel like home to you? And then one of my favorite lines from this entire movie: can Christian come with me? No, the queen must ride alone. Like when she's going to bless the crops. I just thought that was really great. I think this movie is excellent. We could talk a lot more about this movie. We could even talk about how wonderfully feminist this movie can come across as, for many reasons. I read an article that was saying that the result of this is like a hyper-expressionistic showing of female support and the catastrophe of the effects of infidelity and trauma in general, and that a bear represents like the masculinity, fertility, and all of that, whereas the flower represents the woman, and the fact that like this spineless man in a bear costume was being set fire by the person in the flower crown and the flower dress, like is a pretty powerful image while she's smiling.
That's excellent.
Also, a lot of this is ruins. If you look deeper into it, all the ruins on their clothing, as well as all around, kind of are foreshadowing of what like their journey as a character is going to be. I only read a little bit on that, but that's a whole nother level. Are you
saying ruins or runes?
The ruins.
Okay.
I probably did say ruins.
But we knew what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, had to clock your accent in
the ruins in Midsommar.
Yes.
It's like you're making my brain hurt.
Yeah. So those are my very high level kind of likes and gripes in addition to what you've all said.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, let's get into it because we have a lot more to talk about with mental health and human.
Yeah, we're at like
this movie is just so.
We're in an hour now. Stick with us. We've got even more stuff. This is going to be amazing.
Oh boy.
Beautiful. Let's get into it with brains. Tasty. Grand. So first off, obviously, Florence like needs therapy, and we realize that like she is in therapy because they make the joke of like, why can't you talk to her therapist? It's like, well, she's talking to her therapist, and it's like, okay, whatever. But I would love for you to just speak on, even though she does have a therapist, she is still clinging very hard to Christian for not only emotional support, but just trying to help her get through that grief, which I think is like even more on another level than just having somebody with you going through something. Like this is a huge thing that you are dealing with, and she is clinging to him to deal with this with her. So even though the relationship is toxic, why do you think that people still cling to those that are closest to them to help them deal with situations they're going
Well,
through?
before Jamie answers that, I want to say we cannot overlook the fact that she is a psychology student and knows all of the things that she's doing to herself and still does it. That's just how powerful trauma and all of that is. Like, I forget that. I totally
Doesn't
forget
matter.
that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I
Yep.
forgot that.
She's a
too.
psychologist. It's wild. It's wild.
And she even says it. She was like, yeah, that's like why I'm nuts. I mean, I chose to do this. And, you know, like she makes the joke about it. Like, I want to go into psychology because I know I'm crazy, in quotes, because I hate using the word crazy.
Have I not said before that there's like plenty of people, including myself, who go into this field because like they themselves are curious about like mental health and wellness and like want to learn more, want to help people. Like,
Yes.
I think that that's a very, very, very common thread.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about why, even though she has a therapist, is studying psychology, she has to know that this relationship is toxic, but she is still clinging on to him to help her go through this. Why do you think that is the case?
I mean, I think that therapy is great, and I think that everybody should be in therapy because it's great. However, therapy is just like one piece of the puzzle. Like, you know, when when you look from a research-based perspective on whether the things that can help somebody, like, you know, overcome something or like work through a trauma or navigate their own like mental health and wellness. Like, there's so many other factors outside of just therapy that can play a role. Like, people always talk about, you know, are there any like genetic predispositions that might influence your risk or protective factors, your socioeconomic status, your like all of these other things. But a huge one that, like, again, as much as I will like throw therapy out there, a huge thing that cannot be forgotten about is your support system. That plays such a significant role in like navigating mental health. So like one thing that we get is Danny just lost a significant support system. Like, she lost her whole family and like is actively grieving them. And we don't really know, outside of like this nameless friend on the phone, we don't know anybody else that she's connected to except for Christian, who like they've been dating for almost 4 years. So like that's a significant person in her life. You can't like, you know, undermine that amount of time in somebody's life. We don't know any other people that have been supporting Danny in anything else outside of the person on the phone again, but we don't even know what their relationship is. So like, I imagine that in this moment, like, you know, A, not wanting to be alone, B, just like leaning on whatever existing support you already have, which like it just happens to be like Christian, and he happens to be like the one person that she feels like she can at least access, even though she still can't fully, authentically, genuinely grieve because she's scared that she'll drive him away too. And it's like the one person that she feels like she is left to lean on. So I think like knowing that support systems are so important and crucial to our mental health, but also like just not wanting to be alone at like the most traumatic moment of her life, that's only making it harder for her to like, you know, not just like leave this dope behind. Like, she's like, I need him, and, you know, as far as we know, he's like there for her. He's answering the phone when she's calling. He's not like ignoring her calls, even though he's like totally disengaged in the phone calls when they're physically together. Like he's not empathizing with her. He's not offering her anything. But he is a physical presence. He is responding. Like there's something to be said for that in a time where she's just like, I need to be connected. I need to like be with somebody who's going to be there. And like for some of those moments, he's there. Maybe not emotionally, but like he is physically present.
Yeah, it's also interesting that like the first time she calls him at the beginning, it rings a lot, but he does pick it up. You can imagine if you can imagine him at that like pizza restaurant table being like, do I answer this? Do I? Yeah, I'm going to answer this. Like it says a lot.
Right.
Like everything is in this movie is very purposeful.
Absolutely. And to that, why do you think, and this is just like a generalized question, but do you think he's even staying in this relationship if it's, oh, am I going to answer this? Oh, it's kind of a burden. Oh, but I'll do it, pick up to seem like the nice guy or whatever he's trying to put on. But if he is not fully engaged in it, then why would anybody stay in a situation when it seems as if they do not want to be a part of that relationship?
Yeah. I mean, a question I could have asked myself in many past relationships as well.
Get into it.
But I mean, I think again, it's like maybe he's fearful of being alone. Maybe it's like there's something that he's still getting from being in a relationship. Maybe he felt like the opportunity has now passed because now Danny is grieving, and like how crappy would it be for him to then break up with her while she's like actively, grieving,
dealing with
these losses. Yeah. So
can I just say, just to put just because in you framing it in that way, how selfish for someone to seriously to think that they are so important in this person's life that it would be awful for them to not, like, it would be another nail in the coffin if this person left that situation. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, yes, this person is grieving, but they lost their immediate family, and you think that you're so important that you're gonna, let me just put on my big girl panties and stay in this relationship with this girl that I don't want to be with because I feel like if I was the one who left her, then everything would just go to shit for her. And it's like, well, who are you? You are nobody. But anyway,
no, but also at the beginning of the movie, he says like, well, what if I regret it? What if I can't get her back and it's too late? Like, he has all these questions coming out that like, he's so, it's interesting. There's a huge millennial aspect to him in terms of he wants everyone to like him. He wants to make sure that everybody, like, he doesn't like confrontation at all, obviously. Like, he just, he would rather things be status quo than grow a spine and, like, make things happen for himself. He wants her to break up with him so that he doesn't have to be the bad guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he says, like, oh, I don't even know them. Like, we're not even that friends. Like, I don't associate with them. Because they're not there to argue. You know what I mean? Like, he can say whatever he wants. So, he's like the opposite end of, like, he's like a truly bad millennial, if that makes sense.
Yes, for sure.
But I will counter the piece around like sticking with the status quo, because I do think that like people are definitely paralyzed by like, what if it's worse? And that's not excusing his behavior.
No.
Yeah.
But I think that like, I think that there is something to say for people who like do really struggle with taking certain risks. Like he's not a risk taker across the board, right? Like he's just like not engaging with anything. Like you said, he has no spine. But I do think that like, there are people who do really struggle with taking risks because the fear of something worse coming from taking that risk is so great that like they would rather just sit in the current state of like unpleasantness. Because at least then they know what to expect.
Yeah. Well, then to that, Jamie, tell us what would have been the better option for Christian to show his support without necessarily staying with her and then adding more kind of chaos on top of it because of all of the gaslighting and because of all of the not comforting her or being empathetic or listening to her. Like, what would have been the better alternative for him to show support?
I mean, like, actually be empathetic.
Yes.
Be
a human, be empathetic.
Yeah. I mean, I know that, some people do, like, genuinely struggle with having empathy, and which is, like, scary when you spend too much time thinking about it. But, like, it's hard sometimes for people to put themselves in other people's shoes and situations. And, like, if they haven't been, like, if he hasn't experienced that kind of loss before, he just might not have, like, any wherewithal to be able to, like, try to think about what she's going through and, like, be willing to sit in that with her, be willing to just, like, like, to actually put her needs before his own. Like, that would be a start.
Yes.
But, like, he doesn't even remember her birthday. So,
right.
It's not looking too good for him.
Is this narcissism? Would his characteristics, like, if you had to place him in some form of a box, as far as like giving him something, like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that because I was like, is it like an ego thing? But he's not even like, he's not even acting as if his ego is like overly inflated. But I don't know. I think that there's definitely some like narcissistic traits in there with the like I don't know, the conversation around the thesis and stuff, and then just being like, oh well, we don't associate with these people and like all of that stuff. I don't know, there's something there. And like he is self-absorbed, but like not in a, again, it's like, I feel like it's more implicit because he's just not doing anything. He's like so not a risk taker that he's not like letting the narcissism act in a way, like he's not acting overly inflated, but I think by not acting, he's still acting that way, if that makes sense. His lack of action is still like rooted in like being self-absorbed, because he's still like making decisions that are self-serving with the thesis, for example, and like choosing not to engage in like Danny's concern around like the fiance leaving his partner behind and like going to the train station by himself. Like there's still things that he's doing, but it feels more like a lot of inaction choices,
which speaks volumes in itself.
Yeah, I just feel like he's like not doing anything where he should be doing things, and then but like that's frustrating to watch him just like not do anything. Right,
because that still displays his character and who he is as a person. Even though a decision wasn't made, like that is the decision that you decided to not do anything because it's still affecting the people around you and only servicing yourself in that way.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. That's what I'm deciding.
Beautiful. Brian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk about the guilt of not doing more for your family. Like, she called, she got that email. That's what that's one of the many things she's carrying with her, that she just didn't do enough to save her family. How do you ever work through that? Like, how does that not eat at you forever? Stumped.
Did you stump Jamie? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There's definitely no good answer to that, because I don't think that that's something, I mean, like, that's a degree of guilt that I imagine you would carry with you forever. And especially in like the brief moment where I think she allows herself to like internalize what Christian said about her sister, of like, she's always like this, like don't let her do this. And it's like, there's just, I think probably a moment where, I mean, there's nothing she really can do in that moment, because she's trying to reach out to her sister and not getting a response because I think it's already too late. And like, I'm trying to think of like what else she could have done, but I do think that like Christian's message to her in that moment like probably adds fire to what she's already feeling of like not doing enough, because she's now like, oh yeah, like you are right, and then it's like, oh no, this terrible thing has actually taken place. So I feel like that makes it worse. So yeah, I don't think there's like an easy, I mean, like, yes, therapy is good and great and all, but like it's not magic. So I don't think that this is this is something that's going to take like a significant amount of time to work through, especially knowing that like her sister like was not well, and we know that her sister was diagnosed with bipolar, but like we don't know the extent of like what her symptoms were and like how severe it was and things like that. So but my hope is that she can at least like come to understand that she like she reached out, she did everything she could do. She reached out, she tried contacting her parents, she tried contacting her sister. Like there are certain things that we don't have control over other people's actions.
Right. Do you feel like this is going to be a weird question, but which path do you feel would be easier to walk along? The path of, like you were talking about, coming to the realization that you did do everything and that's how you process that guilt out of you? Or kind of like a Babadook situation where you're just learning to deal with the guilt and it's always going to be there, but you now have kind of put it in a place where it's sitting with you and you can continue to walk through life with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like grief is definitely more of the latter, where it's like, it's something that's with you, because like at least my philosophy of like our experiences, like we can't, like, they happened. They're things that happened. They are like past, like our past is part of us. We experienced it. We can't say that it's like never gonna impact us and like doesn't mean anything, because like it happened. I think it's more of like, how do we then learn to cope and like move forward even though those things have happened to us? Like that's like the true challenge. But like I don't think we can say that we'll never, because like think about like grief from the perspective of like a grandparent or something. Like when a grandparent passes away, if you have like a strong relationship with a grandparent, it's like you knew that like at some point like they were gonna die, because like that's the life cycle, and like it's anticipated in a way. You're not like totally caught off guard by it, because like that's how time works. And even let's say like it happened when you're young, and then like you're older and you're like reflecting back on like past experiences, like you're not forgetting that loss hasn't happened. It might still impact you in the present, right? But it's like, are you letting it totally like derail your entire day? Can you like no longer function thinking about like fond memories with your grandparent in the present, like today in the present? So like that's kind of what I think about when I think of like how people navigate grief. It's like, it's not something that you're necessarily like totally forgetting about, because like it happened, right? Like we can't make those memories like fully vanish from our brains. So like, how are we dealing with it? We could still honor people and like think about them fondly, even though like it's still a loss. And so I think like thinking about it in that perspective, where we can process like think about positive memories, think about like fond times, like conjure up the part of like reflection that like still feels more positively. But there's still, I think it's not always going to feel like 100% positive, because it's still sad. That longing and that loss is still there, and that's what makes it all so complicated. So like I don't think that I think grief is something that like we carry with us and we figure out ways to like cope and deal with it. we can continue to like conjure it up in different ways. Maybe sometimes it feels compartmentalized, but like other times it might like seep out a little bit. But like we have to like do like a lot of work to figure out like how we are going to move forward despite those experiences having touched us in some ways.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, is Christian a top 5 worst partners in any horror movie?
Yeah, I don't like him.
I don't either. And I feel like he is on par with Micah from Paranormal Activity. But I want to say he might be Christian might be worse.
Another one.
Just because
is it Mika or Micah? I don't remember.
Micah, yeah. I don't know.
Mika.
The boyfriend
I'm
from
trying to think
Paranormal
about
Activity.
her saying it annoyed. Mika.
I think it's Mika, like the singer.
Oh. Mika.
I don't know.
Then yes.
I'm just saying there's so many words that I can't say on this episode today.
It's totally fine. You know what you can say? Rotten Tomatoes.
Hey.
Hey, baby.
Good segue.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
All right, Rotten Tomatoes. Let's guess the Rotten Tomatoes score on this one. What do you think that this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Ooh, I'm gonna say 84.
Jamie?
I feel like
I'm gonna say 89.
It has an 83 on Rotten Tomatoes. And actually, the audience score is much lower at 63%.
I believe that.
Audience,
Yeah.
what's happening?
Ambitious, impressively crafted, and above all, unsettling. Midsommar further proves writer-director Ari Aster is a horror auteur to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
Definitely. 2 things that I wanted to mention that we didn't talk about. One, this movie's really funny. Like, yes, you have the comic relief of, like, the Will Poulter stuff, but you also have, like, when she's tripping during the maypole dance, and they all of a sudden she understands Swedish. Like, that's really funny. Like, there's
that part is very funny.
there is a lot funny in here. And then I also there's like the whole thing about like the young boy who's a product of incest, and he's the one who can write the new book and stuff like that. What I found interesting this time is that like they asked questions about incest. They're dumb Americans who are asking these like very rudimentary, basic, like prejudgmental questions like that, which in some ways is distracting them from what's actually happening to them. Like their expectations are met that this small commune has like incest babies. You know what I mean? And so they're that is a part of a larger blinding in terms of their narcissism, their self-absorption, like all of that stuff. I just thought that was this time I kind of pulled that from it a little bit, which is super interesting there.
Yeah.
Cool. Should we do the 4 S's?
Yeah.
All right.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
The 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. We're going to rank skulls, scares, and shakes 1 through 10, and then we'll do our suggestions. Skulls is how it handled mental health and human behavior. Scares is how scary was it. And then shakes is how much is this movie going to stay with you. Jamie, let's start with your numbers.
Sure. So for Skulls, I gave this an 8. I feel like one of the only things that, like, I don't know anybody who would do this is when Chidi sneaks in to, like, read and take pictures of the book. Like, who would do that? Like, your thesis is just, like, not that big of a deal.
No.
Like, the fact that they even let you in and allowed you to, like, be a part of this and, like, document it already, you are crossing a line, and, like, that pissed me off, and I just don't feel like people would do that. So I minus points there. But everything else, love, emotions, grief, empathy, all in. Scares, I gave this a 5. You know, I think the first watch, like, the jump scares really got me. The jump scares, like, still really freaked me out this time. But overall, it's just, like, the sense of unease and dread that's building throughout the entire thing. There's so much tension. Makes me wildly uncomfortable. That is all scary to me. And then for shakes, I'm giving it a 9 because this movie's great. And truly the only thing that didn't stick around is clearly the upsetting parts. So otherwise, I think it's going to live in my brain forever and ever. And I welcome it.
Forever and ever, you'll stay in my heart and
In my brain.
Nikisha.
Beautiful. Skulls, giving it a 9. I think the people are absolutely peopling to the point where it is infuriating. Scares, I'm going to give this a 7 because of the tension building and because of some of the jump scares and the great makeup for all the gory things. And Shakes, I'm giving it a 9. I really enjoyed this movie so much, and I think it's so well written and acted, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Skulls is a 9 for me. I actually did believe that, even though it was dumb, I did believe he would go in there, just because the movie built so much of that, like, competition between the two, and, like, he was, like, had the edge. It was still dumb, and I don't necessarily 100% believe it, but I think they justified it enough in the movie for me. 6 for scares. I don't like leg things, and this is the ultimate leg thing. And then this is a 10 for me. I think I might even like this more than Hereditary. This is like a solid 10 for me. Yeah. I think this is like a perfect movie, regardless of what, as I mentioned earlier, what genre you kind of like view it through. And then I'll start with the suggestions. Apparently, there's 171 minute director's cut of this. So there's like an extra 24 minutes in the movie. That was his cut that he wanted to release. And then the studio's like, maybe like do another edit of it. And we got the one we got now, which is perfect. But I haven't seen it. I really want to watch it. So I'm going to put that on my suggested. The director's cut, the 171 minute director's cut of this bad boy.
Fascinating.
Nice. I'll go. My next one, I was just thinking about joining like communes and weird kind of stuff, and we've covered this on the podcast, and Jamie had so many words about it, and I love it. Wrong Turn 2021.
Oh man, I forgot about that movie.
But I mean, talk about joining communities and
Sure.
stuff by force and all the things. So putting those two together,
It's definitely a movie.
it's a movie.
Jamie?
Yeah, so I went in the having difficulty processing grief direction, and my suggestion is The Invitation.
Good one.
Oh, yes.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it is a good one. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Beauty. Well, I think that wraps up our episode of Midsommar. I feel like we could have did like a 2-part on just.
I still want to.
Let's keep
I
it
still want to
going.
know what you think. Do you think that British couple was right or wrong to judge the people jumping? Because like they're in a different culture, and yes, it's totally crazy, but it was totally consensual in terms of the old people like. That's how they wanted to go. Obviously, it's culty, and up until that point, we did not know it was nefarious. Like that they were brought there for nefarious purposes. Like this is their culture. Like, would you walk into a bris and say like, "Don't cut that little baby's penis tip"? You know what I mean? Like, like, do you think the British couple was wrong to like judge that scenario in that moment?
Right. Because it is a cultural thing, and we don't want to, you know, it's just that it's such an extreme. It feels like such an extreme example.
It is.
But or comparison.
I got
but
nothing.
yeah, I think that knowing that they were going willingly, and you can see on the surface that nothing crazy was happening. They weren't being forced or pushed off the ledge. Then it is something that you have to sit and say, everyone is okay with this. They're not asking me at the time to sacrifice myself for something, this is what they are doing, and I'm observing their customs, then yeah, I think that they should not have judged. Should they, if they wanted to leave, then yes, like leave. Like if I don't want to see a bris, then I won't show up for it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So they should, the if nothing crazy was going to happen, like if this was not Midsommar movie that we know that
Right.
it is, they should just politely excuse themselves and say, thank you for your service. I'm out. I'm good. I'm glad that you are doing this for you, but deuces
Sure.
for me.
And Briss is probably an extreme example because, like, again, there's no, like, the little babies and, like, let's do it. You know what I mean? So, like,
Right. Yeah.
anyway, let's
still,
just,
yeah.
maybe we,
Yeah, you're bringing up a whole different argument about consent.
yeah, I
actually.
am. So that's why we're going to pull the train into the station here. That was a bad example.
You're like, I did not intend for
No,
this to go.
but that was a terrible example, analogy, how,
It's not a terrible example.
but
It's
I'm just curious
extreme.
because this time through, I felt differently about their reaction to it than I'm not gonna argue that their reaction shouldn't have been valid. It was very valid, like totally. I'm just
Right.
asking the question because that's what we do here on Talking Horror. We ask the questions. We ask the tough questions.
Yes.
Anyway, let's back to you, Nikisha.
So great. I love it. Fan of it. Great. So that ends our episode. You can follow us on all of the social medias at Talk Horror Pod on the Instagram and on the TikTok. Help us now get to 12,000. And thank you for those who have helped us get to 10K.
Woohoo!
We're putting out the content. You guys are responding. We are soups grateful for that. And Brian, where can they listen to our bits and bops?
They can listen to our bits and bops wherever you get your bips and bops, like Spotify, Stitcher, and of course Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you. Brian, send us out with a quote.
Sure. I'm just gonna go with my favorite quote from this one, which is obviously both of my grandparents died from ticks. No, it's can Christian come with me? No, the queen must ride alone.
Plays Beyonce.
Yeah.
Queen.
Yeah.
That was a very different direction in my head. I was like, cue the Swedish flutes.
Oh, well, also that. That's more appropriate.
Both at the same time, so it's just really uncomfortable and complicated.
Just Swedish music and Beyonce, just boss energy in
Yes.
the most chaotic
Love it.
form ever. I think that's appropriate. Great. Thanks for listening,
All right.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.